Tonight on CTV News, provincial government workers issue strike notice.
Civil servants keep British Columbians safe, and they help drive the engine of our economy.
Job action could begin as early as Tuesday. What services could be impacted and what the province is saying.
Canada's public service unions have delivered a crushing blow to the government. A smackdown so overwhelming it sent shockwaves through Ottawa. 92% of workers in British Columbia authorized walkouts. And suddenly the stability of Canada's economy is looking a lot less certain. Services that people depend on every day like firefighting, social work, liquor stores. It's all hanging on by a thread now. And at the center of the storm is Mark Carney. The man, the myth, the legend, the inept one. He's looking shocked and out of touch and unable to stop the bleeding.
Overwhelming show of support from the union's members for this strike vote.
Mijung, 92.7% of these BC GEU members have authorized their union to go ahead with the strike if they see fit. And at the core of all of this is what they're calling an affordability crisis for their lowest paid members.
Now the timing cannot be worse. British Columbians are facing long lines at airports and ferry terminals. Like YVR warned of more than 90,000 travelers surging through its gates in a single day. BC ferries braced for traffic spikes 50% above normal. And this was before a single picket line went up. So what happens when thousands of civil servants walk off the job? The province infrastructure is already stretched to its limits. They can't handle more of that. It risks of collapse. Like under the weight of it all. For union leaders, that's the point. They say wages have fallen so far behind the cost of living that government workers can't keep up with rent, groceries, or fuel. A wildfire fighter in BC earns about $28 for an hour. That hijab that puts their lives on the line. The strike noticed in British Columbia wasn't just one dispute. It was a part of something much bigger. 34,000 public servants like wildfire crews, social workers, liquor store clerks, clerical staff, all voting by more than 90% to say enough. They're telling the province they can't afford to live where they work. They can't afford anything. They can't afford much anymore. And they're not alone. Engineers, scientists, psychologists, geoscientists in the Professional Employees Association also have given their union the green light to strike. These aren't jobs you can't just quickly fill super quickly. Go, oh, that's easy. No biggie. These are specialist fields. And even they're saying wages have fallen so far behind that the government can't recruit or keep people anymore. Like the frustration stretches far beyond BC and Alberta. Teachers are openly preparing to strike as talks break down. Now that's a fight that could hit classrooms just as students are heading back to school. At Canada Post, another round of labor disputes is simmering. At Air Canada, flight attendants went really far as defying a federal back-to-work order. Yeah, I remember reporting that. And that great move, guys. I order you to go back to work. People are striking, dude. They don't care. Yeah, all right. That's not how you win people over. That was a gem of a moment from the government ordering people who are defying that order. It just goes to show how deep the anger runs. Even outside the unions, the pressure is showing. Colleges and universities across the country. They are reeling from the collapse in foreign student enrollment and slashing programs and laying off staff. These aren't just numbers. These are livelihoods. Communities built around campuses and suddenly are facing cuts that taken one by one these fights might seem separate, but put them together and it looks like a country where almost every sector is reaching a breaking point. Like it's not a single dispute anymore. It's a wave, a tsunami. Yet Carney has responded with little more than talking points. He says agreements are best reached quietly behind closed doors. But workers hear that as code for delay, deflection, another round of wages that don't come. And they hope you just kind of lose steam and give up and accept less for less, you know? Because wages right now are not coming anywhere close in Canada to covering inflation. Like the disconnect is fueling the anger. It's why nearly every sector from postal workers to Air Canada staff has flirted with job action over the past year. People aren't just frustrated, they are livid. They feel abandoned. The crisis in BC is more than a regional dispute. It's a warning sign for the rest of the country when 92% of a major union's members are voting yes to strike. That's called panic for the nation and Ottawa for the government. It doesn't just reflect frustration with one contract. It signals a deeper collapse of confidence in the system itself. Workers believe the government doesn't care, doesn't listen, and the government seems unable or unwilling to respond. That's how small disputes turn into national movements. We've seen the pattern before. One sector digs in, another follows, and then another, and then suddenly that small strike, the lines spread from coast to coast. In 2022, it was liquor distribution workers shutting down supply chains in BC. And now it's tens of thousands of provincial workers backed by professional associations of engineers and scientists. Or when Trudeau was Prime Minister and all the truckers stood up in unity and defiance and said, "Nah, we're not moving anywhere." It was a tense standoff. A very intense standoff. Like every round of resistance encourages the next one. What started as an affordability fight is becoming a test of political legitimacy and will. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Canada isn't prepared for that kind of test. Inflation has destroyed families for 2 straight years. Housing costs remain out of reach. Foreign student enrollment has gone down the tubes, gutting universities and colleges. Municipal services in Halifax to Vancouver are now stretched to the breaking point. In a country already teetering on economic fault lines, a coordinated wave of union militancy could quite readily be the straw that breaks the camel's back, the catalyst that brings the whole edifice crashing down. Public safety is already showing serious fractures. 32 individuals have drowned in the province this year, the majority of them young men, and often with alcohol or drugs involved. Physicians stress these fatalities are preventable, but prevention, awareness, and enforcement budgets are abysmally short. Police have also cautioned of a new scam being employed against Chinese-speaking citizens by using job advertisements provided to steal their private information. In Langley, schools are racing to construct 900 new student seats simply to catch up with population growth, and thousands more are still years away. Each is an individual story, but a step back is to observe how all of them fit together, telling the tale of a society that is full to the brim and a system in limbo under its own weight. Canadian laborers have watched their share of prosperity shrink over decades. Their pay has barely increased while housing costs have skyrocketed, benefits and pension plans have been eroded, and job security is a luxury. These complaints did not happen overnight. They piled up, layer upon layer, year after year. Mark Carney is reported to be fuming in the background, urging provincial negotiators to deliver, but offering little that will appease workers. Unions call his approach tone-deaf, but ordinary Canadians pay attention to a man who is lecturing about the benefits of fiscal responsibility while families are barely able to pay rent and groceries. That's political poison. Carney also begins to feel increasingly like a distant banker and not a leader. Best case, oblivious to the damage that is being done. Worst case, indifferent to it, trying to hold together a whole country that he no longer understands. Meanwhile, voices of opposition are growing louder and criticizing, juxtaposing Canada's malaise with a very different mood in the United States, where wages are increasing, energy is growing, projects are breaking ground and confidence is building. Trump's America First, Workers First campaign is striking resonance far beyond the base, and every strike vote makes it harder to exclude comparison. Ottawa fears not one lone disagreement, but the momentum that will convert bargaining table anger into ballot box rebellion. If the workers lose faith in their government's ability or desire to shield them, they'll look elsewhere for protection, and that elsewhere may not be kind to Carney's Canada. He wants to emanate power and tranquil leadership, but every week he looks more like a man driving a slow-motion collapse, a train crash that you want to pull over, freeze frame, and rewind. The question is whether or not Ottawa will find a path to compromise before anger spills over. Across the border, though, the dichotomy is stark. Canada is moving towards gridlock, while only talking about renewal in the United States. Workers here are baffled to understand why their own government cannot perceive their predicament. And if that collapse happens, nothing that Carney or anyone else will say can fix the shards that if you found value in this analysis, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave your comments below. And visit the next Truth Report for the latest updates and in-depth coverage. He wants to emanate power and tranquil leadership, but every week he looks more like a man driving a slow-motion collapse, a train crash that you want to pull over, freeze frame, and rewind. The question is whether or not Ottawa will find a path to compromise before anger spills over. Across the border, though, the dichotomy is stark. Canada is moving towards gridlock, while only talking about renewal in the United States. Workers here are baffled to understand why their own government cannot perceive their predicament. And if that collapse happens, nothing that Carney or anyone else will say can fix the shards that if you found value in this analysis, be sure to like, Subscribe and leave your comments below, and visit the Next Truth Report for the latest updates and in-depth coverage.